तत्सवितुर्वरं रूपम् ज्योतिः परस्य धीमहि यन्नः सत्येन दीपयेत्। तत्सवितुर्वरं रूपम् ज्योतिः परस्य धीमहि यन्नः सत्येन दीपयेत्। तत्सवितुर्वरं रूपम् ज्योतिः परस्य धीमहि यन्नः सत्येन दीपयेत्।
So welcome everyone. Let us start. Yeah, so we'll start from page 77. His height repelled the lowness of Earth's state. So, yeah, anyone who feels ready.
His height repelled the lowness of Earth's state, a wideness disconnected with its frame, resiled from poor ascent to nature's terms, the harsh contract spurned and the diminished lease.
Yeah, Monica, I'll read.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Only beginnings are accomplished here. Our basis matter seems alone complete, an absolute machine without a soul, or all seems a misfit of half ideas, or we saddle with the wise of earthly form, a hurried, imperfect glimpse of heavenly things, guesses, and travesties of celestial types.
Here chaos sorts itself into a world, a brief formation drifting in the void, apings of knowledge, unfinished acts of power, arcs of power, flamings of beauty into earthly shapes, love's broken reflexes of unity, swim, fragment mirroring of a floating sun, a packed assemblage of crude tentative lives are pierced into a desolated whole.
Your hopes. There are blind voices.
Recording.
Yeah, Raviji,
Life smart. Yeah.
say it again. I couldn't hear you at all. There is
Okay. Thought climbs in vain and brings a borrowed light. Cheated by counterfeits sold to us in life's mart. Clutch at a forfeited heavenly bliss.
Yeah, anyone who reads next can take, along with the purple lines, the yellow as well.
There is provender for the mind's satiety. There are thrills of the flesh, but not the soul's desire. Here, even the highest rapture time can give is a mimicry of ungrasped beatitudes, a mutilated statue of ecstasy, a wounded happiness that cannot live, a brief felicity of mind or sense, thrown by the world power to her body's slave, or a simulacrum of enforced delight in the seraglios of ignorance.
Yeah, I think anyone who reads the last can take up both the paragraph, like sections in purple and yellow.
For all we have acquired soon loses worth. An old disvalued credit in time's bank, imperfections check drawn on the inconscient, and in consequence dogs every effort made, and chaos waits on every cosmos formed. In each success, a seed of failure lurks. He saw the doubtfulness of all things here, the incertitude of man's proud, confident thought, the transience of the achievements of his force.
Thank you, everyone. So we stopped here on page 78 for those who have the book with them. And here Ashwapati Sri Aurobindo is explaining to us how we ordinary, in our ordinary consciousness, the life is too dissatisfactory, and no matter how hard we keep trying, we still remain empty. So something is always lacking. No matter how much effort we put in our thought, that also still is not able to reach the highs. So it will take just a overlap from the last few lines. For all we have acquired soon loses worth. All our acquisitions, name, fame, respect, property, it could be material possessions, even spiritual realizations on the way. He says that all we have acquired soon loses worth. I think it's more a reference to all the worldly accomplishments rather than the accomplishments of the spirit, if I can say. So everything soon loses worth. An old disvalued credit in time span. And as you know, you put money in a bank, and if you don't activate the account for a long time, the money loses its value, and many a times the bank even claims the whole money that is there because the account would be said to be inoperative. So disvalued credit, all the uh, accomplishments that we have in material existence, they lose their value very, very soon, and they become disvalued. Imperfections check drawn on the inconscient. So the bank on which the check is drawn is the bank of inconscient, and what can we expect from that bank? All our actions and deeds are done in our ignorance. All our achievements, all our ambitions, successes. So they are not. They may serve a purpose on the way, but they are not that fulfilling. They don't give it something lasting. and in consequence dogs every effort made. And we may plan, have a great plan charted out in front of us, but we see that there are so many unpredictable factors that come in life and its happenings, that whatever happens is not the exact thing that we expected. So always there are uncertainties there, and they kind of ruin the plan that we make. So in consequence, consequence would be some result or some sequel that we have estimated for ourselves. But as if like a shadow, some kind of inconsequence dogs every effort made. So this is how we ordinarily live. And chaos waits on every cosmos formed. In each success, a seed of failure lurks. So no matter how little uh, like a harmonious, beautiful world we may want to create within this material world. We may try to create a community which is working very well, good efforts of people in that community. But as long as that community will remain little confined to borders, again there is bound to arise more and more confusion slowly. So we can never have a community uh, living in material world at the stake of other communities which are not perfected in into higher degrees. So always there would be confusion after the initial vision, whatever propulsion it gave. After that, very soon it will face problems, because we cannot have this harmony at the stake of others, that others are in darkness and we have this small little beautiful world in which we live harmoniously. So always that would not be allowed, because one has to expand and expand. So something or the other, because of that border that we create, will happen. And chaos waits on every cosmos formed. In each success, a seed of failure lurks. So what we call as success in our material terms, very soon we see that it becomes very dissatisfying. All of us have gone through education, degrees, bought some property or bought a car or bought some material possessions. So in that moment, it seems like a success. But very soon it appears very dissatisfying. It doesn't somehow fulfill us. He saw the doubtfulness of all things here. Everything is with a doubt. Nothing is absolute. Everything is relative. And we can't predict fully what will happen. We may plan something else happens. So doubtful, whether the plan will work out or not. The incertitude of man's proud, confident thought. So I was going through a kind of a small documentary where they were sharing about these mountain expeditions that many very expert climbers perform at very difficult peaks. And it was very strange to see that no wonder that they have so much of expertise and so much of skill, which they have gotten through a lot of discipline, lot of effort, but still human arrogance is everywhere. So like, I'm going to climb this peak. Last time maybe I was unsuccessful, and I would say this time I'm going to see you on the summit. I'm say reporting it to the media that this time I'm going to see you on the summit. I'm not going to be bogged down by the mountain. And they were sharing that those people, and this is just one of those incidents, they never came back. No trace of them were found. So we plan, we think that things are in our control. I have such a good skill and such a good expertise, but things don't happen the way we decide according to our little limited mind. So the incertitude of man's proud, confident thought. And there is an arrogance associated with that. That I know, I will scale this peak. So instead of reverence, there is a kind of an arrogance which is there. Yeah. Actually, Snehi, there are many documentaries of such kind. I can share one link with you, like little short clips that people have made. Yeah, I'll share something with you. So it just, for me, it was a reflection of how we don't realize that there is grace working in every breath of that we take, and even our intellect that works so beautifully, it's because of divine grace that it works beautifully. If something happens and we are lying on, with some disease uh, in the brain that we can't even think, what's there to think? Then all the analytical thought is gone. So we don't realize, in our arrogance, human arrogance, we don't realize that it's grace which is making us functional, making us operational, and there is nothing more than divine grace. So I think these lines resonate very much. What we see, the incertitude of man's proud, confident thought, the transience of the achievements of his force. So again, the fleeting achievements that we have, and in the terms of evolution or eternity, those achievements are nothing but a speck of dust. One tsunami comes and a whole tall building, no matter how strong it would be, gone. So transience of achievements of his force. And this is the way we usually live. This is the ordinary human consciousness in which we live. And now Sri Aurobindo finishes that and then he goes further. So we'll take up the new lines and go ahead with this description of man presently as he is right now. So would anyone want to read lines in blue?
Being in
Yeah,
smallness.
Raviji, your voice is not clear. It's cracking.
Okay,
Yeah, we can't hear you.
right now. Okay.
If someone else could read, whose audio maybe better.
So I'll go. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. A thinking being in an unthinking world, an island in the sea of the unknown. He is a smallness trying to be great, an animal with some instincts of a god. His life, a story too common to be told. His deeds, a number summing up to naught. His consciousness, a torch lit to be quenched. His hope, a star above a cradle and grave.
Thank you. So again, describing the way
Thank
we
you.
are at the moment, a thinking being in an unthinking world. So man is supposed to be a mental being. With man comes the capacity of thinking consciously and more degree of self-awareness, being able to propel ourselves further to perfection than any other beings at the moment. And this is the urge for progress that makes us different. Otherwise, even apes are able to think. They make tools. It has been researched that they are intelligent, they have emotions, they make tools, they know how to create a tool and use it. So thinking starts there also. But with human beings, the quality is that we can move towards increasing degrees of perfection. We can exceed ourselves. We don't have to remain the way we are right now. So right now we may be animal man. From animal man we can become man, and then from man we can become a divine man, as Sri Aurobindo says. And by man I don't mean masculine or feminine. So please excuse me, it may be woman also, but I'm just using this term as a human being, for a human being. So a thinking being in an unthinking world. And in this vast sea of unconsciousness, now if we look at a stone, it appears unconscious. If we look at wood, plastic, all the creation around, it appears relatively less conscious than the human consciousness. So in this vast unthinking world, human consciousness is supposed to be the thinking consciousness, mental consciousness. But the tragedy is that we are even not there. What comes with our birthright, mental being, we don't even use our mind to its extent that it can be used in a good way, in moving towards perfection. A thinking being in an unthinking world, an island in the sea of the unknown. Now, our little consciousness is something like an island. And imagine that you have vast stretches of ocean, and there is this little small island which is conscious. And that vastness which you have around is unconsciousness. So, to the degree that we know, that we become conscious of, it is just as little as can be compared with an island in this vast sea of unconsciousness. There are depths and heights of which we are unconscious. An island in the sea of unknown. He is a smallness trying to be great. So we all identify ourselves with our body consciousness. This is me, this limited self is me. And that's why, since we are not that, and there is something in us which wants to be more and more and more and more. So where we start from is that we think of ourselves as a smallness, as a limited self, which wants to further and further expands itself. It wants to expand itself. Why? Because we identify with our limited consciousness. We think that this is who I am. I am this limited little self trapped in this body. This is my limit. And when the body ends, I end. Because we don't identify with our true consciousness, he says he is a smallness trying to be great. Why? Because we yet at this level of consciousness, we don't identify with our greatness. We mostly identify with our smallness. The example that we commonly use is that if you were asked two questions, are you, somebody says you are divine and somebody says you are unworthy. You would naturally, most of us would go to, yeah, I can relate with I am unworthy. I would not be able to relate with I am divine. It would require effort for me to relate with I am divine. So that's where we start from. He is a smallness trying to be great, an animal with some instincts of a god. So since we are evolving from stone, plant, and then animals, and then apes, and man, we have a lot of animal in us, which we don't even realize. We are blinded to that animal nature in us. This constant urge to reproduce, survival of the species. It's animal, it's coming from animals. To also, when hungry, I can't help but find a prey or find something to eat. So these are animal instincts, good for survival, yes. Good for us to live on this planet, yes, okay. But we don't have to remain stuck there at that animal consciousness. And many people have shown that many people are nowadays turning breatharians, where they don't need even food to exist. They live on this prana, the energy that is there all around us, and they call themselves breatharians. So we have that capacity. We can go ahead, but I would not advise anyone to just live with that before having some expertise and progress in that area. Because I know a couple of people where you almost malnourish yourself because you're not evolved in the consciousness, but then you stop eating and then it malnourishes the system, so it would not be advisable. So we are an animal with some instincts of a god. Now what are godly instincts? Selflessness, true kindness, genuine goodwill, compassion, oneness, taking a stand for each other. These are all empathizing with others' pain. These are all our godly instincts. Purity, devotion. But there is a large part of us which is the animal still, from which we have to move on. We have to transcend. That is one of the tasks that we have as a human being, that we have to perfect, we have to progress. And this pressure that we feel that no, this is not enough, I have to move on, I'm feeling still some ugliness in me, I have to further become purified. This pressure comes from the soul within, the divine presence within. If that divine presence is not there, then we would not feel that pressure of perfection, that no, this much purity, this much stability, yeah, it's okay, but I have to still go further, stabilize myself further in the divinity within, purity within, and further sort and kind of organize the elements in my being. This pressure comes from the soul consciousness. We all have seeds of perfection within, seeds of divinity, love, true freedom, true love. And that's where we have to move on. This pressure is there, continuously there. So an animal with some instincts of a god, his life a story too common to be told. If at large we see our lives, at one moment of time, each person is very important to himself or herself. Yes, each moment in my life is very crucial. Things are happening in my life, and to each person, that person is most precious to himself. And yet, if we see at the larger scale, all of us have very common lives, very common needs, some emotions, some sentimentality, some success, some property, some material gains, some emotional relationships, very, very common. So his life, a story too common to be told. What do you talk about that story? It's too common. His deeds, a number summing up to naught. So the kind of actions that we do, they are half in ignorance and half maybe coming from our godly instincts. So they, some positive, some negative actions, they kind of cancel each other, and ultimately it sums up to a naught, nothing, zero. So his deeds, a number summing up to naught. His consciousness, a torch lit to be quenched. So the way we live, it appears like very soon I will be in the paws or jaws of death and gone. So that little consciousness which came for a while, it just lives for some time, a torch, like some light, some battery is there, lit to be quenched. And then he relates it with his hope, a star above a cradle and a grave. So how it takes, the being takes birth, have a mortal body, like a child, and above the cradle there is a star of hope to which he wants to reach but is not able to reach, and that star remains a distant star until he reaches its grave, that being. So usually, again, this is the usual way that we live. This is our story. And it was shared by Shraddhavan that when Huta Didi was, since she used to work with mother on these paintings on Savitri, when mother and Huta Didi were discussing these lines, Huta Didi could not help but burst into tears looking at this sad condition that we are in. And mother had to console her because of that. So it appears very saddening the way we live if we look at that. But that's not our only truth, and that would come in the lines later. Yeah, so anyone wants to share here? Yeah, at this point, if there is no reflection, I would like to share something I came across. It may not be directly related with Savitri, but related with this longing that we have in as a human being. We all have a longing because we feel that something is missing and I want to be more and more and more. And without that longing uh, towards perfection, uh, Baba Farid, there is a poem by Baba Farid, a kind of a couple of lines by Baba Farid, which were later converted into a poem by one of the poets. It's called Virha Tu Sultan. So, longing, this longing that we feel, uh, you are the king. Why you are the king? Because without that longing, man is almost like a stone. So, I'm going to share this first. Um, Yeah, first maybe the lyrics with all of you, and then maybe a small music rendition, which I was fortunate to witness live once here in Delhi. So I'm going to just share the lines with you here. It's called Birha Tu Sultan. It's a couplet written by Baba Sheikh Farid and the poet Shiv Kumar Batalvi. He extended that couplet. He was a Punjabi poet. Yes, yes, Neil, you can take it up. So it's called, again, there is English translation also. Would anyone want to, yeah, read it? I don't know. I can also read it, but it would be nice if someone else does it. So maybe you can take up only the English one for all of us. Maybe we can all resonate with the English one.
Monica,
Yeah.
could it could the actual? I mean, you said it's in Punjabi, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So could you read it in the language, and then we could take the English? I mean, it would be really nice to just
Okay, okay.
listen to it.
So I'll
Yeah.
read the part in, I don't have a very good Punjabi language,
That.
but I will try to read.
Yes.
Yeah. Birha birha akhiye, birha tu sultan. Akhiye means you are asking. You are asking for that longing. And then birha tu sultan. Birha, you are the king. Longing, you are the king. Birha birha akhiye, birha tu sultan. जिस तन बिरहा ना उपजे सो tan jaan masan. So in that body in which longing does not arise, that body is as good as a dead body. असी सब बिरहा घर जमा दे, असी बिरहा दी संतान, बिरहा खाई बिरहा पाई, बिरहा आए हानदान. असी सब बिरहा दे मंदेरे, दुख दे दूफ मसान. So this is an extension by that poet Shiv Kumar Batalvi. बिन बिरहा उमर सुगंधी ना, सभी बिनसा जान. बिरहा सेती उपजया, ए धरती ते आसमान. बिरहा सेती सूरज जमा, दिहूं पाए गेरे खान. माए वदभांगी तेरे बिरहा, लार लाहक मेरे आन. बिन बिरहा थी दी ठिकारी, किसे उजारे कब्रिस्तान. आह सब्जे धरतियाँ मेरियाँ, ते सबहे ही आसमान. आह सबे रंग ही मेरे, मेरे वैदे जुमर पान. I would not be able to go through the whole because it's the whole extension that has been given by the poet. I'll share the link if you want to go through it. My focus today is just on this initial few lines. Let us sing of separation. Separation is king. A body that does not know separation is but a corpse. So these are the original lines by Baba Farid. We are born in the house of separation. We are children of separation. We receive it. We endure it. We are on this earth to deal with it. In the temple of separation, each one of us burns like incense. Without separation, every odor of life would perish. So there is also a musical rendition by Rabbi Shergill. I'll share that link with everyone. I think it was very beautiful when he sang this, and yeah, very moving also. So I'm going to now come back to the lines. And Snehi wants description on his life, a story too common to be told. So what comes to me here is that the way we live usually, we are all running after these material needs, whatever society tells us, we run after that. And whatever our parents tell, we run after that. Whatever our peers are doing, we would run after that. And still we remain empty handed. Then we have some relationships in our life, some known, some not known, and we see that it's very common. These all these stories, which I may think I'm so special and I have to hide my stories from everyone because others may not know. But when we jump into lives of anyone, we would see that everybody has similar stories of success, of failure, of a broken heart, and all that. So too common, our stories, nothing unique about them. So that's where he was sharing that that's how we usually live. And now we come to what's possible for us. Yeah. Would anyone want to go through lines in
Yeah,
green?
Monica. And yet, a greater destiny may be his, for the eternal spirit is his truth. He can recreate himself and all around and fashion new the world in which he lives. He, ignorant, is the knower beyond time. He is the self above nature, above fate.
Yeah. So we don't have to remain downtrodden with animal instincts and heavy with the burden of ignorance and live a life story which is too common to be told. That is right now our situation, but we don't have to live like that forever. So he shares, and yet a greater destiny may be his. And that's why when we come to Mother and Sri Aurobindo, the first thing Mother says and stresses upon is dig your soul out, get in touch with your soul. And Mother says that the biggest tragedy is to live a life, so-called human life, and yet to remain disconnected from our soul consciousness. That's the biggest tragedy. There is not, Mother says that's the only failure, not even the biggest failure. That's the only failure. So now, for those of us who are still young and still would have more and more failures, now I think this really aligns inner purpose or inner alignment. It gives us a right direction that no matter how many failures in material life I may go through, or how many successes I may go through, nothing is as important as getting in touch with my soul consciousness. Everything else is secondary. Breaking off relationships, losing jobs, losing wealth, property, anything, nothing comes in front of that. So the biggest failure, the only failure, Mother says, is to be a human and yet not being in touch with our soul consciousness. So when we begin this effort, when we put effort and get in touch with our truth, then a greater destiny can be ours. And yet a greater destiny may be his, for the eternal spirit is his truth. So our smallness is not our truth. What was there in the blue lines earlier? He is a smallness trying to be great. And nobody feels good and okay or comfortable with that smallness. We continually feel uneasy about it, insecure about it. We're not very happy with our smallness. So that's an indication that we are not that. We may identify with that smallness, but that's not our truth. For the eternal spirit is his truth. He can recreate himself and all around. So not only can I recreate, organize my thoughts, my feelings, my, all the ideas that I have, little ripples of movements. Not only can I recreate my inner sanctuary, I can also influence the outer circumstances. That is the power we have. If only we get in touch with the true source of power within, which is the soul consciousness. So he can recreate himself and all around. And how we know how Sri Aurobindo was recreating, one can say, acting from far distance on World War when it was happening, or India's freedom struggle. We don't even know what he did, and he did the job because he could exert that influence with his consciousness, heights of consciousness. But for that we have to put effort. We keep on living a life where we put effort in all the directions possible, but in this direction. But then we cannot imagine a life where this much height is possible. Then I would live a common, ordinary life. But if now I am wanting more and more to live a high, lofty life, not for anyone else, but for my own self first, getting in touch with our truth, then I will have to put effort. He can recreate himself and all around and fashion new the world in which he lives. So not only the inner world I can fashion for myself, like Mother says, you can sort and organize everything in your being. I can also fashion in outer world that I live in. That's the power we have. So we don't have to live like a victim of our fate. He, ignorant, is the knower beyond time. So Sri Aurobindo puts it both together. I, who am right now identifying with my ignorance, who am I truly? The knower beyond time. Just feel it even for a second in your being. No matter how much I may be drenched in my ignorance, I am the knower beyond time. That's my potential, true potential. So he, ignorant, is the knower beyond time. He is the self above nature, above fate. So no fate I have to succumb to if I truly realize who I truly am, if we get in touch with our soul consciousness first. But as long as we live in ignorance, we will be subjected to the laws of nature and to these planetary movements, which are there, because we live in ignorance. So they will have their influence. I will be powerless in front of that influence, because I still do not identify with the true self, the high self that I am. And for that, I will have to put effort. That would be my sole preoccupation, that I want to dig out my true nature and be one with it. That has to be the sole preoccupation. And the soul is the direct source of knowledge. So when we keep asking here and there, what do I do? What do I do? I feel so confused. All of us do that, from time to time. We feel so lost, abandoned. Why? Because we don't put effort. Reaching soul consciousness, identifying with it is last in our priority list. If we, today make a list, many things will come on the top. Maybe buying a milk packet, or maybe buying some bread for the morning. So that's how we are lost in our day-to-day lives. Yeah. So it has to consume us. Otherwise, we will be always away from, in one sense, the treasure that we are. One has to put effort. So this is what he was explaining about the present ordinary consciousness, and yet there is a greater destiny possible for the man. And now a further experience of Ashwapati, that when he saw all this, what happens, what comes next. So yeah, anyone wants to share anything here before we move on?
So, Monica, is there some, could you elaborate on the soul consciousness, or is there something written by Mother on this that one can probably read and sort of understand a little more.
Yeah, so
Or
there
if you
is
can just
much,
give a little.
yeah, too much written by mother.
Okay.
One has to dwell, but I am going to, since you asked, let me read something.
Huh.
Today I was sharing on some other group. So a mother talks about getting in touch with the soul consciousness, and these are a few lines I'm going to read. In order to find the soul, you must go in this way. And mother gestures of going deep within. Like this, draw back from the surface, withdraw deep within, and enter, enter, enter. Go down, down, down into a very deep hole, silent, immobile. And there's a kind of something warm, quiet, rich in substance, and very still, and very full, like a sweetness. That is the soul. And if one is insistent and is conscious oneself, then there comes a kind of plenitude which gives the feeling of something complete, that contains unfathomable depths in which, should one enter, one feels that many secrets would be revealed. Like the reflection in very peaceful waters of something that is eternal, and one no longer feels limited by time. One has the feeling of having always been and of being for eternity. That is when one has touched the core of the soul. And if the contact has been conscious and complete enough, it liberates you from the bondage of outer form. You no longer feel that you live only because you have a body. That is usually the ordinary sensation of the being, to be so tied to this outer form that when one thinks of myself, in quote, one thinks of the body. That is the usual thing. The personal reality is the body's reality. It is only when one has made an effort for inner development and tried to find something that is little more stable in one's being that one can begin to feel that this something, which is permanently conscious throughout all ages and all change, this something must be myself. But that already requires a study that is rather deep. Otherwise, if you think, I am going to do this, I need that, it is always for your body, a small kind of will, which is a mixture of sensations, of more or less confused sentimental reactions, and still more confused thoughts, which form a mixture and are animated by an impulse, an attraction, a desire, some sort of will, and all that momentarily becomes myself, but not directly. So, and then it actually goes on. I can share directly the link with you.
Yes, that'll be really nice.
This was the
Beautiful.
crux.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, most welcome. Thank you. So, shall we go ahead? Any further reflection, anyone? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead then. So now Ashwapati, how, when he sees this, how it goes ahead. Yeah, would anyone want to read? Yeah, would anyone want to read?
Yeah.
His soul retired. His soul retired from all that he had done. Hushed was the futile din of human toil. Forsaken wheeled the circle of the days. In distance sank the crowded tramp of life. The silence was his sole companion left. Impassive he lived, immune from earthly hopes, a figure in the ineffable witness's shrine, pacing the vast cathedral of his thoughts, under its arches dim with infinity, and heavenward brooding of invisible wings.
Yeah, thank you. So, looking at all this, being available in his consciousness to all that he was shown, his soul retired from all that he had done. Hushed was the futile din of human toil. So many of us have, I'm sure, we have these experiences as if you are just absorbed in a silence within, and whatever is happening outside, all the people running around you, people going to their offices all around you, cars moving, as if it appears you are a bit distant from all that, as if there is a kind of a lot of space that is created. Earlier you were a part of that chaos, and now that chaos appears to be a little distant, and you appear to have retreated in some kind of inner silence, inner sanctuary. So his soul retired from all that he had done. Hushed was the futile din of human toil. Din is something which is like a futile movement. It's like it's not leading to any result, like some just unnecessary movement. And in front of that silence that one retreats into at times in our life, it appears that all the movement that is going around in the day-to-day hustle bustle lives of us, as if it's very futile. Why are we doing that? And I remember, I think Taru had shared once. Taru, if you can share, would be nice. Once you had shared with me when you were coming back to Delhi after this experience. I think you were on a wheelchair then in the airport after the NDE experience. You had shared with me that it felt that as if I'm somewhere else, deep within, and people are moving so fast around me, and why are they doing like that, something like that. So, Taru, are you there? Would you like to maybe, I don't know how much
Yeah,
clarity.
no, I think you said it all. So basically, I think it was after, the NDE, which kind of touched a very, very, very silent space, right? Like there was a lot of stillness in the being. So I was in the airport, and like you said, I was in the wheelchair, and I was just standing, like, I wasn't being wheeled at that time. I was just in the chair sitting, and suddenly, how they show in movies that the world is moving at like super fast speed, and I'm just still. And it just, so just, I just touched that space, with that stillness, that why and what and how fast and futile most of our running around or the speed is, and how just the duality of how in one moment both the stillness and that rush could be present. Yeah, just that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes. And mother shares that if only once one has that experience, or some deep experience like that, one must not brush it off like, oh, that just happened, like a mistake, and my regular life is this, the life full of chaos. One must actually relive and say that if I can live it once, I can live it again, and that can become my life. So not to again too tightly attach to any experience, but to know that if I have glimpsed that silence once, we can easily retreat and have a communion with that silence again and again. And why not operate uh, the whole of our life from that retreated place of silence, because there we can take better decisions, right decisions in our life, and move with more clarity rather than confusion. So it's almost that kind of a retreat within our being, which Taru was sharing, that hushed was the futile din of human toil, forsaken wheeled the circle of the days. So the nature went around, the day after night, and evening and afternoon, all the parts of nature, movements of nature, they went around. But now he had no interest or inclination in them. So he just kind of ignored uh, all that movement of nature, and for him this was the concrete most reality that he was retreating into, this silent deep space within. In distance sank the crowded tramp of life. So tramp is like this loud tramping movement that soldiers make, ta 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 ta, like that. And as if all that regular mundane movement of life, he could see that at a lot long distance, like he was away from and retreated from that surface consciousness and also the outer movements in our life. The silence was his sole companion left. I think what to say about this is more to be felt and experienced. And these are experiences of Sri Aurobindo himself, that the silence was he retreated deep in his being, deep in the depths of the being, and the silence was his sole companion left. Impassive, he lived immune from earthly hopes. So usually the way we live is we are always enchanted towards either a person, his life story, or this success, this want, this desire, that relationship, that job. This is our life. This is our life. Now, in the state he lived, he was disenchanted from all this glitter that is there in this worldly realm. Impassive. He lived immune from earthly hopes. What are the hopes that we have? May I have a child? May I have a marriage? May I have a soulmate? May I have a person who I can cherish forever? May I have a job which can give me enough wealth and prosperity? These are our earthly desires, earthly hopes. So he says that now, impassive, he lived immune. They could not touch all these earthly hopes, could not touch him. A figure in the ineffable witness's shrine. Sakshi Bhav, the stance of the witness. So he was completely identified with the witness consciousness. And this witness consciousness, why in capital? Because it is one witnessing consciousness that is there in the whole wideness of creation. It's not that when I am in my witness consciousness, your witness consciousness is something separate, and then I have a more colorful witness consciousness, you have a less colorful witness consciousness. So our witness consciousness is one and the same. It's like, imagine that there is vast space, and this vast space has a few buildings in it. So when the buildings are there, it appears that the space is categorized, like this is the space of my house, this is the space of your house, this is the space of that neighbor's house. But if you remove all the buildings, the space still is one continuity. It was always one continuity. So this knowing aspect within us, the consciousness within us, which sees the thoughts, sees the feelings, is conscious of the ripples. It's the only one divine consciousness which is extending itself like this vast, illimitable space. So it's this one witness that is there. There are not thousands of witnesses. So he was identified fully with that witness consciousness. A figure in the ineffable witness shrine. Ineffable, nothing can be said about it. No matter how much we talk about it, we can never really describe. And words are not enough when we talk about these things. Pacing the vast cathedral of his thoughts, under its arches dim with infinity, and heavenward brooding of invisible wings. So now he feels so expanded in his consciousness, such an expanse. If some of you have ever stood in a church, in a cathedral, mostly like European cathedrals, and if you have seen how high its roof goes, the arches go, they go really very high. And as if you are standing in your being, you're having that stance that the more you look upward, as if there is no end to those arches. So the arches, the higher you look, the dimmer it get, but there is no end to it. You can't see the ceiling, you can't see that, okay, it is ending here. That vast his thoughts and consciousness had become, the mind, that expansive, pacing the vast cathedral of his thoughts, under its arches dim with infinity. Why dim? Because the more you look above, as if you're trying to look where it ends, you're not able to look at the ends, because it stretches vast, 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 and vast, further beyond. So it's like you can see the dimming because of the lack of light being there, but still it doesn't end. The arches continue. And heavenward brooding of invisible wings. Now this is a very interesting word which comes again and again in Savitri, brooding. And he uses this image of as if like there is a bird with wide wings sitting over its eggs and brooding. That's how they hatch the eggs, birds, hen or a bird. And when they are hatching the eggs, they appear to be in a trance like state. They would not eat or go anywhere. They don't eat for that time when they are brooding over the eggs, because there is something going to come out of that hatching. So when we talk about this person is in a, he's brooding, we say that he's contemplating, or he's deeply absorbed in his trance like state. And because something is going to hatch out of it, something is going to come out of it. So as if he could see that there was this vast bird with invisible wings, and some potential was being hatched there in the infinity that he saw, the vastness that he saw. And his thoughts were not anymore inclined in the earthly interests, the interests that we usually have. Some approval, some validation from this person. Oh, this person did not smile at me today. Oh, that person had said something yesterday. We are always lost in this drama. But his thoughts became so vast, so expansive, that now they touched the summits of consciousness and did not relate much to the earthly, ordinary consciousness. Yeah, this would also refer to this state that we have often discussed, udasin or disenchanted. That disenchanted appears a little bit disappointing to us mortal beings, but many a times, it's just, its meaning is taken in a different sense, because we are so used to live in enchantment and excitement that when we talk about disenchantment, it appears, oh, what a life it would be when I'm disenchanted. But disenchanted is a very good state to have, because when we are enchanted by every little thing in our life, we often, more often than not, we only succumb ourselves to more and more disappointments, because the perfection that we seek, we don't find in the earthly realm. It's only when we get in touch with the spirit that we can have that perfection even in the earthly realm, not before that. So it's good to get disenchanted, knowing that I would not get anywhere the supreme fulfillment that I'm looking. That has to be found within. That's disenchantment. And then earthly glitter cannot attract me anymore. So that happens with us when we put effort in our journey. So yeah, any reflection here, anyone? I think we can end here with last 3 lines. Would anyone want to read? Okay, I can read. Oh, Sham, you're there. Okay, go ahead.
A call was on him from intangible heights. Indifferent to the little outpost mind, he dwelt in the wideness of the eternal reign.
Thank you. So now, as if he is summoned from these heights of his consciousness, there is a task to be done. And the more we put effort on our journey, effort is to be put, because effortlessly we are just a slave to our desires and patterns and tendencies. That's the effortless state that we start from. So effortless, usually, whenever we talk about masters, they say the supreme way is effortless. Or when we look at these very famous musicians playing their guitar or some piano, it seems, oh my God, the fingers are moving effortlessly on the piano. But we don't see the hours of practice and effort they put when we were not watching. So effortlessly, we are a slave of our instincts, blind instincts. We are slave of our thought patterns, emotional patterns. We are slave of our thoughts, a mind which is not tamed. We are slave of that. That's our effortless state. To get in touch with the soul consciousness, we have to put effort. So I think that's where Mother talks about effort, persistence, sincerity, vigilance, not even faltering for a moment. So, and that's why they talk about being a warrior spirit, because it requires courage, guts. No matter how many times I fall down, I will rise up again and again begin the journey. So the more we get identified with our divine in us, purest in us, the highest in us, it appears like a call. A call was on him from intangible heights. Something is calling me. Indifferent to the little outpost mind. So it's very interesting, for us to read this, that the sense mind still remains. The limited mind, it is not yet completely gone. Like it stopped opinioning, giving it opinions and giving its judgments and commenting on each and everything. It is there, this little outpost mind, the sense mind, which interprets all the data that comes through the senses. It is still there, but now he was completely indifferent to the outpost mind. So the chatter of the mind, blah 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 blah, this person, that person, that goes in our life, it does not matter now. He did not pay any attention. He just completely ignored that chatter of the outpost mind. That is what we also have to do. We cannot wait that when the mind will become absolutely silent, then I will become, then I will start this journey of taming the mind. That would never happen. It is because the mind is not silent that the taming has to happen. And we have to constantly, even when we are meditating, we are sitting for meditation, we are trying to bring the mind to either Mother's name, Divine's name, or the breath. The chatter will be there. So we can't expect the chatter to just dissolve completely. But now I would not listen to the chatter. I know there is nothing lying for me there. So that's how we have to ignore the chatter of the sense mind. limited mind, my limited opinions, judgments about this, that, my life, others' life, my opinions, my dogmas. This is what I know, I feel. All that has to be disregarded if we want to get in touch with the highs and deep in us. Indifferent to the little outpost mind, he dwelled in the wideness of the eternal's reign. So disidentified from the surface consciousness and identified with the depths and silence in myself, the vastness in me, the purity in me. That's where he finds himself right now. And I think these are very important reminders for all of us, because that's why Sri Aurobindo and Mother have left this path for us in such microscopic details, because this is the path all of us have to, a greater or larger or lesser degree, we have to travel. We don't have to remain our smallness. We have to walk towards our vastness and identify more with the vastness and ignore the littleness. Yeah. I think rest we'll take next time. Yeah, anything here? Anyone?
Yeah. Can you please share that Baba Farid's poetry on the group?
Yes, I'll send it. Yes.
Yes.
I'll also send the
Yeah,
the music, the singing by Rabbi Shergill. It's very nice. I'll share it. Yeah. Anything? Anyone? Any last comments? Okay. Thank you everyone for listening and joining in today. And
Thank you.
we could not hear.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.